She had been on her knees for 6 months, her hands raw from scrubbing floors that never seemed to shine enough for the officers who passed by without even glancing down. Every morning, before dawn, she would line up the metal buckets, fill them with icy water, and start again, tile by tile, corridor by corridor, in silence. No one knew her name. No one cared to. They just called her the cleaner. Asterisk, asterisk, what city are you watching from today? If this story resonated with you, hit subscribe for more real stories about extraordinary people. Asterisk, but that wasn't her real name. And cleaning floors wasn't what she was trained for. Her story began half a year earlier, when a convoy rolled into Fort Halley, a small, aging military base tucked deep in the Nevada desert. The air there was always dry and heavy with dust, and the men stationed there lived on the edge of boredom and bitterness. When she arrived, wearing an old uniform with no insignia, no rank, and no past, everyone assumed she was a disciplinary transfer, one of those troublemakers who'd been demoted to base chores as punishment. She didn't correct them. She just lowered her eyes, nodded to every order, and went about her tasks. The captain who oversaw maintenance, a man named Harlan Briggs, made her his target from the very first day. He was one of those men who wore his rank like armor and his authority like a weapon. He enjoyed the way soldiers stiffened when he passed. And when he saw her, quiet, slender, and without a single badge, he found a new way to assert his dominance. Floor duty, every day, he said coldly. 6 months. No complaints. You'll scrub until I can see my face in the tiles. She only nodded once and started working. The others in the base called her Ghost Girl. She barely spoke, never ate with anyone, never looked at anyone long enough to invite conversation. Yet there was something strange about her, the precision in the way she folded her cleaning rags, the exact timing of her routine, the faint scar running along her wrist that looked more like a mark of combat than accident. At night, when the others slept, she'd sit quietly under the old signal tower, staring into the sky, her fingers brushing against the small silver tag she kept hidden under her uniform. No one ever saw what was engraved on it. Weeks turned into months. The men mocked her when she passed. They'd toss empty cups on the floor just to see her bend and pick them up. One of them once whispered, "You must have messed up bad to end up like this." She didn't answer, but inside her, a storm brewed quietly, not anger, not humiliation. Something deeper, a heavy, controlled patience, the kind that only comes from someone who knows exactly who they are. There were rumors, of course. Some said she was caught stealing. Others said she disobeyed a direct order in combat. Captain Briggs didn't care what the truth was, as long as she stayed beneath him, as long as she stayed invisible. Until that one morning. It was early, the kind of cold dawn where the desert looked painted in gray. She was on her knees again, scrubbing the corridor outside the operations room. Inside, she could hear faint voices, officers discussing a radio intercept, something about an ambushed recon team somewhere across the border. Then, through the thin wall, a sharp, panicked voice crackled through the radio. "Echo Command, this is Unit Delta. We need immediate extraction." Repeat, immediate extraction. "The enemy has spotted our position." The officers inside froze. The signal was encrypted with a clearance level far above their rank. The comms officer stammered, unsure what to do. The captain cursed under his breath, then shouted, "Cut that channel! It's not our jurisdiction." But before anyone could move, the woman outside, the cleaner, stood up, slowly, calmly. "Don't cut it," she said. Her voice, for the first time, carried authority, the kind of voice that made people stop talking. The captain turned, furious. "You don't give orders here. Get back to your bucket." She didn't move. She walked into the room, ignoring every stunned face, and approached the radio. Her hands moved with precision, flipping switches, adjusting frequencies, inputting codes no one else recognized. "Unit Delta, this is Shadow 6, she said clearly. "Authentication Tango Bravo 7. Continue transmission." The room went silent. Shadow 6? The voice on the other end replied instantly. Ma'am, we thought you were dead. The captain's face drained of color. The soldiers in the room looked at each other, then at her. The cleaner. The woman who'd spent 6 months on her knees. The one they mocked. But her eyes were steady, cold, and calm as she spoke into the microphone. Status report, Delta. The voice crackled again. We're pinned. Enemy artillery inbound. We need clearance for emergency airstrike. She pressed the button. Authorization granted. Fire sequence, Sierra 9. I'll take full command responsibility. Then she turned to the captain. Get me the tactical feed from Recon Satellite 2, now. He hesitated, still in disbelief. You can't just... Her gaze sliced through him. Do it, Captain. That's an order. It was then he noticed a tag around her neck, a small silver plate that had slipped out from under her collar. Etched into it were words that froze him in place. Commander L. Grace, Special Operations Command, Navy SEALs Joint Task Division. For 6 months, he'd been making a Navy SEAL commander scrub his floors. Within minutes, she was coordinating a rescue operation right there in the dusty operations room, guiding aircraft, rerouting comms, issuing coded orders none of them could even begin to follow. Her voice was steady, decisive, and sharp. The kind of voice that saves lives. When the extraction was confirmed, she set the radio down, exhaled once, and said quietly, "Mission complete." No one moved. The air felt heavy with disbelief. Captain Briggs swallowed hard, trying to find words. Ma'am, I didn't know. She turned to him. You never asked. He dropped his eyes. Shame burned in his chest like fire. In the days that followed, word spread through the entire base. The woman they called Ghost Girl had been a decorated commander, presumed missing after a classified mission overseas. She had returned under silent orders, a reassignment meant to observe the integrity of base personnel, to see who would treat the lowest rank with dignity. Her silence had been a test, and most of them had failed it. The day she left, every soldier lined up along the corridor she'd scrubbed for months. The tiles gleamed under their boots, the same tiles she'd cleaned with her bare hands. She walked through them quietly, a small duffel on her shoulder, her silver tag shining faintly against the light. Captain Briggs stood at the end of the hall, rigid and pale. When she reached him, he saluted stiffly, his voice low. Permission to speak, Commander? She gave a small nod. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. But I want you to know I've learned something I should have known long ago. Respect isn't earned by rank, but by how we treat those who can't fight back. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once more. Then you've learned the only lesson that matters. And with that, she walked past him, into the light of the rising sun. Months later, the same corridor still gleamed, not because someone ordered it to, but because every man who walked through it remembered what it stood for: humility, respect, and the quiet strength of a woman who never needed to prove who she was to anyone. In a world obsessed with power and status, she reminded them that real strength doesn't shout. It doesn't need titles or uniforms. Sometimes it just picks up a mop, stays silent, and waits for the right moment to remind the world who it really is. What did this story make you feel? Where are you watching from? Subscribe to Soul Relief Stories for more real stories that heal the heart.